As soon as my mother-in-law saw me resting, she started. "What are you doing? You're so lazy, you disgust me, Luna." She kept her voice low so her friends wouldn't hear, but she said a lot of mean things to me. I just sat there, keeping my head down, waiting for it to stop. Then, her friends walked over, looking shocked. "Oh, how could you talk to her like that? My name is Luna, I'm 35 years old and a housewife. I met my husband, James, through a friend. He had a kind smile and a good heart. He was the perfect, good man. We got along right away and started dating. After a few years, he proposed, and I was so happy to marry the man I loved. We met each other's parents, had a wedding, and went on our honeymoon. Our married life was happy. But 2 years later, James had to go on a long business trip overseas. Working abroad had always been his dream. I had watched him work hard for it, so I was happy for him. But then, we found out I was pregnant. It was overwhelming to think about being alone for a year while expecting a baby. I thought about staying with my mother, but she had recently remarried, and I didn't want to bother her. Then James suggested I stay with his mother. She had lost her husband last year and was living alone. "Luna, it'll be safer with my mom around. She can help you with the housework," he said. At the time, I thought it was a great idea. I liked my mother-in-law and thought she was kind. James talked to her about it, and she happily agreed. I felt lucky to have such a nice mother-in-law. So, we moved in with her, and a few days later, James left for his trip. My mother-in-law and I saw him off and went home. But as soon as we stepped inside, she changed completely. "Luna, I've been watching you, and you are completely useless," she said. "What? It's terrible having such a worthless daughter-in-law in my house. I feel bad for James. Maybe he left because he was sick of you." "What? Please don't say that." Her gentle smile was gone, replaced with harsh words. "You don't deserve my son. You stole him from me. I raised him so well. Why did he marry someone like you?" She adored her only son, who was smart and successful. He had graduated from a top university and worked at a big company. Everyone admired him, and she was proud of him. Maybe she felt like I had taken him away. Maybe she resented me. "You tricked my son. I hate that I have to feed you, but I'll take care of my grandchild because it has James's genes." She always said things like that. At first, I thought she was just upset and would stop, but she didn't. She kept trying to break us up and even take my baby away from me. I couldn't tell James because he was busy adjusting to his new job overseas. Besides, every time she talked to him, she acted sweet and praised me. He had no idea what was really going on. Even if I had told him, would he have believed me? The bullying continued every day. At a family gathering, she told me, "Luna, you are not my family. After you finish serving everyone, go eat alone in the kitchen." Honestly, I was kind of relieved. At least I didn't have to sit with her. But it was getting harder to deal with her cruelty. I was pregnant, and my morning sickness got worse each day. It was hard to cook, clean, and do all the chores. But my mother-in-law didn't care. She never let up. "You are so useless. How long will it take you to clean?" "I'm sorry, but I have morning sickness," I said. "What? Don't make excuses." "But, didn't you feel the same way when you were pregnant?" "What are you talking about? Don't compare me to someone like you. Pregnancy is not an illness." My mother-in-law never cared about how I felt. She just kept treating me badly. And it wasn't just me, she insulted my mother too. "Ugh, I wonder if you got your mother's awful smell." "What do you mean? You don't have a father, right? He must have run away from your mother because she was a disgrace, just like you." I was shocked. How could she say something so cruel? My father had died from an illness when I was 5. My mother raised me alone. "Oh, I see, so you must have been poor. No wonder you have no class. You don't belong with James. I don't know why he married such a disappointing woman like you." Her words hurt me deeply. "That's enough. You don't like me, fine, but don't insult my mother. She worked so hard to raise me, and now she's happily remarried. She deserves respect." "You're still such a wild, stupid woman," she sneered. "If anyone made her look like a fool, it's you. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself." I had reached my limit. Being pregnant was already stressful, and dealing with her cruelty every day made it unbearable. Why did she hate me so much? No matter how much I stood up for myself, she never stopped. She kept ordering me around. One day, I got so angry that I refused to do my chores and stayed in my room. But then she blocked the door so I couldn't go to the bathroom. I begged her to let me out, but she just laughed. If you want me to open the door, you have to apologize. You are way too young to disobey me. You are my servant and my housekeeper, and you will always listen to me. I had no choice. I was desperate. I apologized. When she finally let me go, I almost couldn't hold it in. I rushed to the bathroom, sweating. She laughed at me as I ran. At that moment, I knew fighting her would only make things worse. I decided to stay quiet and do as she said. Then, one day, she told me that her friends were coming over. I have some important guests coming over today, my mother-in-law said. One of them is the wife of the president of Future Incorporation. She won't want to talk to a poor woman like you, so stay out of the way. She was still treating me badly, but my husband would be back in a few months. Until then, it was safer to do what she said. Okay, what should I do? I asked. Clean the house properly, and make sure to prepare tea and sweets, she ordered, looking pleased with herself. I hurried to buy expensive sweets from a boutique, just like she wanted. When I got home, I arranged them nicely on a fancy plate and made perfect tea. Soon, my mother-in-law's guests arrived. She greeted them with a big, fake smile. She clearly wanted to impress them. Luna, bring the tea, she snapped. Yes, ma'am, I replied quickly. I served tea and sweets, trying to be polite. The guests seemed kind. Oh, thank you, one of them said. I see you're pregnant. You must be excited. Yes, she's kicking a lot. I can't wait to meet her, I said with a smile. You'll have a beautiful, healthy baby. They seemed nice, but then I felt my mother-in-law's sharp glare. I knew I had to leave. I bowed quickly and walked away. After that, I went back to cleaning. It was exhausting since I was pregnant, so I took a short break in the kitchen with some tea. Just then, my mother-in-law walked in. She glared at me. What are you doing? You're such a lazy, disgusting woman, she hissed, keeping her voice low so her guests wouldn't hear. I sighed and lowered my head, waiting for her anger to pass. But then, a voice interrupted. How dare you speak to her like that? I looked up in surprise. One of the guests stood nearby, her face pale. My mother-in-law spun around, panicked. What's wrong, Mrs. Green? I was looking for the restroom and overheard you yelling, Mrs. Green said. My mother-in-law tried to laugh it off. Oh, I was just teaching my daughter-in-law some manners. But Mrs. Green's eyes widened. Do you even know who she is? What do you mean? She's the daughter of the president of IBX company. What, IBX? Yes, my husband's company works closely with her mother's business. My mother-in-law turned pale. You mean, the company my son works for? Exactly, but I don't care about that, Mrs. Green said coldly. If my husband's company suffers because of you, how will you take responsibility? I was just as shocked as my mother-in-law. I had no idea Mrs. Green knew my mother. Apparently, she had visited my parents' house and seen my pictures. She had recognized me when she heard my name, but I had left before she could speak to me. Now, she finally had the chance. Of course, my mother-in-law had no idea about my family background when she mistreated me in front of Mrs. Green. Oh no, Mrs. Green, I'm so sorry, I truly didn't mean, please forgive me, she pleaded desperately. But Mrs. Green wasn't having it. If you want to apologize, apologize to Luna, she's the one you've been tormenting. What kind of person forces a pregnant woman to work like this? Apologize to her right now for everything you've done. My mother-in-law turned to me, her eyes darting nervously. Sorry, she muttered. Mrs. Green didn't even look at her. I've lost my appetite for tea, I'll be leaving now. The other guests, taken aback by the scene, exchanged glances, but when Mrs. Green left, they all followed suit. My mother-in-law collapsed onto the floor, her face pale. Oh no. I'm doomed. Then, in a complete and sickening turnaround, she suddenly begged me, Luna, please, tell your mother nothing happened. I had no idea you were from such a respected family. I stared at her, disgusted. That's enough. You treated me horribly. You insulted my mother without even knowing who she was. You never even cared to remember how she became a single mother. I will never forgive you. She grabbed my hand, her voice trembling. But if you don't, my son's future will be ruined. I pulled away, Your son didn't do anything wrong. You're the only one responsible for this. And in case you're wondering, I've already told my mother everything. She was furious when she found out how you treated me. Mrs. Green was even more disgusted and decided she wants nothing to do with you. Her friends feel the same way. My mother-in-law's face drained of color. And no, please. Oh, and one more thing, I continued calmly. I recorded everything, every insult, every cruel remark. You harassed me every day, so I have plenty of evidence. I even got a medical certificate proving how much stress you put me under. I can and will sue you. Her mouth fell open. What? And I've already told my husband everything. He said I have every right to take legal action and that he will cut ties with you completely. No, please tell me you're just saying that, she wailed. I met her desperate gaze with a steady one. You brought this upon yourself. You treated people horribly, and now you're facing the consequences. I refuse to stay here any longer. I'm leaving. With that, I packed my things and moved back to my parents' house. My mother welcomed me with open arms, giving me a peaceful place to stay. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, lost everything, alone and abandoned. She spent her days in solitude, left with nothing but regret. Meanwhile, I gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl. A few months later, my husband finally returned home. Holding my hand, he looked at me with deep regret. Luna, I'm so sorry for all the pain you went through because of my mother. I shook my head. I should have told you everything sooner. It's not your fault. He cupped my face gently. From now on, I will always be by your side. I'll protect you and our daughter, our precious family. Tears welled in my eyes as I smiled. Yes, the three of us will be together and happy. We held each other close, then turned to our baby girl. She was sleeping peacefully, a tiny smile on her face, our perfect little family.